Thir- 13 minutes gone past, there we go, 13 minutes gone past 7 o'clock, and this is Freshly Pressed on Smooth Breakfast. Guess who's back from the December break? Mr. C. How you doing?
Good morning, Sope. Good morning, Lagos. I hope we enjoyed the holidays.
Oh, we did. We really, really did. At least I hope we did as well. All right. So, of course, it is Freshly Pressed, and this is the part of Smooth Breakfast where we get to take a half-hour stroll through the articles in our daily newspapers and see what's affecting us as Nigerians living here inside this beautiful country of ours. We've got a lot coming your way. We'll be talking about ASU. We'll be talking about inflation. We're going to be talking about the 2023 budgets. We're going to be talking about a lot of things. And in order for you to join the conversation, there are so many different platforms. We are already streaming live up on youtube.com/smooth981FM Lagos. And you can go over there and leave a comment on the live chat just to jump in on the conversation. You can send WhatsApp messages to 0809-440-981. And you can also take things over to Twitter with the hashtag FreshlyPressed981, my favorite hashtag of all. All right, joining me as well today, apart from Mr. C, I have got Chibuzor. Good morning, Chibuzor.
Good morning, Sope. Good morning, Mr. C.
Good morning, Chibuzor.
Great to have both of you in. I wonder what this mix is going to look like. Please, gentlemen, don't believe me. So let's get into it. So we've got a number of topics to discuss. Mrs. C, I'm going to be starting off with your analysis on this one. We're talking still about the Naira redesign because 2022 is not yet over. From the Punch newspaper, Senate seeks deadline extension till June. So it's urged the Central Bank of Nigeria to urgently extend the withdrawal date of the old currency notes from January 31st to the 30th of June 2023. This resolution coming from a point of order that was raised by Senator Mohammed Ndume of APC Borno during plenary on Wednesday. And they're saying that the rural communities there are some that have even yet to hear of any sort of policy change or anything about new Naira.
Okay, thank you, Sope. So we'll recall that on the 26th of October, the CBN had issued a statement saying that there were new Naira notes that were going to be introduced into the Nigerian economy, and that by the 31st of January, which is the end of next month, the old 200, 500, and 1,000 Naira notes will be withdrawn from circulation or will no longer be legal tender, and the new redesigned notes will then be legal tender. Now, at the time, we did express our reservations about the entire policy, given a short period to adapt to the new notes. Now, we've read reports, I have seen reports in the news and social media where businesses, small business owners, small traders are rejecting the notes, the new notes, they're rejecting them. So what that shows is that we haven't done enough sensitization with regards to the new notes. That's the first step. Now, this whole business about going cashless, it's been on for about 6 years, but we still haven't gotten the basics right. Yes, we want to go cashless, but we're all witnesses to the frustrations we've experienced this year with regards to the cards. You go to a fine restaurant, you've ordered your meal, you probably have a date, right? And it's a first date. So
paint this picture, Mr.
So
C.
You're trying to make a very good impression first time out. You've enjoyed the meal, the conversation's been fantastic. Then it's time to pay. Your financial institution is not active, it cannot be found, you can't pay with a card, and you don't have cash because you've keyed in completely to this cashless policy. And then the girl is looking at you and is like, okay, what's going on here? And then you're saying okay, can I do a bank transfer? And they're saying no, because we've also been inundated with reports of fraudulent and fake bank transfers. And the restaurant guys say no. You then say, okay, can I get cash? How do you then explain to your date for the very first time that, please wait for me, I'm going to get cash and I'll be back? If she refuses to believe that statement, can you fault her? Can you blame her? So back to the story. The Senate yesterday then raises the motion and they're saying, look, you need to extend the deadline by 6 months to 30th of June 2023. Now, I thought it very odd that we're heading into a major election, right? and less than 3 weeks before the election, you want to completely change the major notes in circulation. I couldn't locate the logic in that policy. And even this 6-month extension, I dare say, I'm afraid that it might not be sufficient. But given what it is, we need more time. One, we need to understand these notes. That's one. Two, the policy around withdrawing the notes also has to be revisited. And I've said this before on this show. The real reason why your money is outside your circulation has not been addressed. So you can redesign your currency notes a million times. If you do not address that issue, you will continue to experience the same problem.
Now, Mr. C, let me put it this way. Sometimes we can be here in Nigeria and be witness to what feel like senseless policy directions or senseless actions, but senseless is only senseless because you're not privy to the information of the person and the rationale behind the making of these decisions. Now, there were obviously key issues that were in play when the CBN and the CBN governor came up with this new and beautiful policy, and the time frame as well. A time frame, by the way, which he has said they're not going back on. Do you believe? So Mr. C just made a face. I just want to confirm, do you believe that they'll be able to stick to the time frame given, to the deadline given?
So I don't believe they will stick to that deadline. And it's really simple. Now, it's too, like I said, I don't have a problem.
It's very short.
I don't have a problem with what they sought to do, because part of it is they're fighting money laundering. They're trying to trace the flow of money within the system. However, it's too short. There are more people in the rural areas than in the cities, and we need to understand that. So,
Mr. C, going by what we've, one of the key issues, money laundering, why is it not possible for there to be a happy medium of, okay, put a ceiling on the amount of notes that you can, of the amount of old notes that you can bring in back into the bank after the deadline? So, for example, if it's like 10,000 naira here, 20,000 naira there, as opposed to 1 billion naira in cash.
So what you will then find is the money can be broken down into smaller amounts below the legal requirement and brought in by several people, and it defeats the purpose. Now, again, our technology is not where it should be. Most of the banks in Nigeria this year have witnessed the exodus of most of their tech guys outside the country. Now, if you notice, tech services from the banks got worse from the second quarter up until this point. Imagine trying to buy petrol. We've been faced with this intractable fuel scarcity, right? You spend 2 or 3 hours on the queue. You finally get to the dispensing point. They've loaded petrol into your car. They filled your tank. And then your card doesn't work, you do not have cash.
Oh, I've heard the stories of people being forced to, after the queues, just forced to park their cars and then go trekking to the cash points.
We need to harmonize all these things. We need to get the tech. We're trying to be like the UK, like the US, like the Western countries, the developed countries, and that's fine. But over there, they don't have the sort of tech issues, the sort of internet issues we have here. And until we resolve them, let's try and review the decisions we take here. But this extension, at the first instance, should be moved to the 30th of June. And I dare say maybe the whole of next year. What's the rush, really?
All right, Mr. C. Someone has come in, and this is Tunde Akinomi from Oregon, who says the dinner analysis, he's not buying it. He says CBN is not doing without notes or cash. They're limiting its circulation. You can still withdraw 100,000 naira per day. That should be enough to pay for your hypothetical dinner dates. You have not seen some of the dinner places. Or if it's really trying to flex, maybe not.
What's his name?
Tunde.
Tunde, please. I invite you to go to RSVP or VA.
Please, can you not mention names on Freshly Pressed? Thank you.
Okay.
Mr. C, just say one of the ones in Victoria Island.
Okay, any of the choice restaurants in VA or Lekki.
Trust me, Tunde.
You'll be surprised 100K doesn't get you anywhere.
If only 100K might get you a starter at this point. All right, let's move on now. Chibuzor, let's get in on this article. It comes in from the Punch newspaper. Reps stop stop planned auction of $1 billion oil assets. Now, this follows the sponsor of the motion was Victor Mela Danzaria, representing the Balanga Bilri federal constituency in Gombe, said, and I quote, "The House is worried that there are unresolved issues between the government and the host communities of Ogoni that are currently fueling resistance and restiveness amongst the people." That's just one of the issues. The other being that there was a $1 billion offer, and now they're trying to sell it to Sahara Energy Limited, he says, for a paltry sum of $250 million. What say you?
Okay, Sope, for me, I would say, I think the major crux or the major issue obviously seems to be the disparity between the 250 million and the 1 billion.
Chibuzor, that's $750 million. We can do a lot with that.
Yes, in this climb and in Nigeria at the moment, that 750 million is a big chunk that is needed by the government for its operation. Especially as we look forward to the budget that is coming up in a few days, hopefully, and we'll see how the federal government intends to fund that budget. But there are other, like the House of Reps member pointed out, there are other issues aligned to this. There's the fact that OML 11 sits right in the middle of Ogoni land. And obviously there's the history behind that particular block and how it moved from SPDC to this current, when he's moved from SPDC, that's the Shell Petroleum Development Company, back to NNPC's Nigerian Petroleum Development Company. It was how it has moved from that. Shell actually went to court to try and get the block back to be able to renew its license, but I think in 2021 the court of appeal finally found found for the federal government, and they took over operations in that time. The other part obviously is the environmental issues, which are the cleanups and the impacts on the general Ogoni and the operating area. As in recent times, I think some weeks ago, the Minister of Environment came out to say that they would not be able to complete, the federal government would not be able to complete cleanups of the Ogoni plan. They're going to clean up after the, if you recall when they did the kickoff of that process, there's a lot of funfair, there's a lot of talk, there's a lot of press. But they've come out to say that they would most likely not be able to complete that process within this government regime, between now and May next year. So that still remains open, and the question is, how would the Ogoni people respond to this, or how would people of those areas respond to this if you go ahead and sell it to the new operator comes online? Would that operator be able to get value for it? And obviously that 750 million gap needs to be questioned. Why are there valid reasons why this oil block is not going back to Shell? Is it likely political instead of economic? And we need to ask ourselves those questions, and those questions need to be answered for the benefit of all, because I would guess that 750 million will come in handy even for the cleanup if the federal, because I know most of the issues with the cleanup is actually the government coming up with its own part of contributions to see through that process. So if Shell is offering the 1 billion, and obviously there are the issues with the communities and all that you need to sort out. But that can't be done in parallel. We can chew and work at the same time. We need to be able to handle these things. And it's not a one-off, it's a continuous engagement with the community. If you can sell the community that this would work out in the best interest of the community, yes, there might be the trust deficit with Shell, if that's the case, but these things can be resolved. Shell, I think at the end of the day, we need to be able to put all the things on the table, and we need to look at what is best for the country. So if it's the 250, if it's the supposed 250 million by Sahara, if that is what it is on the table, or if it's the 1 billion that they claim to be on the table.
I'm sorry, or if there's another in-between amounts, because
I think there's something in between that will balance out both sides. We need to look at what's the best offer financially, and also for the communities, and also for community relations across board. So all parts of this deal needs to be looked at, and we need to be able to come to some ground and come to some decision. But it's about the government needs the money, and we need the money as Nigeria.
Okay, so very quickly, Chibuzor, I agree with everything you said. I just wanted to chip this in. We've noticed over the past 12 to 24 months that the IOCs are tending to pull away from onshore assets and would rather go to offshore assets that they can guarantee the security. So I'm not surprised that Shell isn't interested in this particular OML, and I'll be very surprised if when all the dust settles that they return to this particular OML, because the IOCs have seen over a period of time that we're not sincere with regards to what is going on in the oil industry. And until we're sincere and we're ready to address it, nothing will give.
All right, let's take your messages. Shell says, I'm one of the tech people that left the Nigerian bank to the UK. My brother, since I arrived, I haven't used up to 50 pounds in cash. I don't even have an actual card. I just use the pay on my phone. The only time in the last 1 year that I've been here that my transaction got declined, and he puts this in capital letters, was because my phone needed a restart. The tech and underlying infrastructure are not the same. Try it in Nigeria, you will wash plates. And Engineer Oru says, 100,000 Naira dinner dates? Cheta has told us Mr. C is a big Ikoyi boy. The CBN has the data, 99.4% have less than 500,000 Naira in their account. So who are those needing 100,000 Naira for dinner dates? The political elites are only buying time for the election. Mr. C, I see you get preparing, but we need to move on. We have more messages and we have more stories. He goes on to say, the political elites are only buying time for the election season. As much as I don't appreciate the short deadline given by the CBN, however, the merits outweigh the demerits. And this message coming in from Tony from Ikeja says, Mr. C is giving the impression that there's more money in the villages. That's not true. Emefiele is right on this one. The villages that use Donkey to move their money to deposit in the banks have more than 3 weeks to do this. They have enough time. Oh, and so many messages are coming in. Orof says, Mr. C, are you joking? The policy is to stop the people who want to move bullion vans with cash on election day. Whilst Dami from Ikorodu says, we're not talking about the drama between the CBN governor and the SSS. Also remember that there are reports that the telcos are threatening to cut off the banks from their USSD services because of debts. Considering that the Bank of England is also releasing new notes in honor of King Charles III, I hate to sound like an African parent, but Emefiele, see your mates. All right. Yeah, that's in 2024 though, right? And we've still got they've still got over a year for that. All right, moving on now. National Assembly passes 21.82 trillion Naira budget for 2023. So the approved budget, we had heard from the original estimate was 20.1 trillion Naira. Now it's gone up by 1.3 trillion Naira. And this article goes on to break down the different elements of the budget. Mr. C, over to you for the breakdown.
Okay, thank you, Sope. So yesterday, the National Assembly and the combined sitting approved the appropriation budget for next year, and it's now 21.8 trillion, which went up by 1.3 trillion from the initial 20.1 trillion. Now, this increase clearly is going to be funded by debt financing, it's going to be recourse to loans. Now, there's an 819 billion domestic loan, which the president specifically requested for to aid the victims of the massive flooding that took place in Q3 in Nigeria. And that domestic loan will be funded entirely by the Central Bank of Nigeria. Now, if we go through the details, they've pegged the benchmark price for crude oil at 75 barrels, and they pegged daily production at 1.69 million barrels per day. Now, currently, I'm not sure we're up to that. So I don't know. I don't have the material they used to arrive at that figure. Now, we've reserved the sum of 6.55 trillion naira for debt servicing. Now, that is a very disturbing figure because it's easily 30% of your budget. 30% of your budget goes towards debt servicing. Then 8.32 goes for recurrent expenditure. Recurrent expenditure really is mostly salaries and allowances. Then for your capital expenditure, you reserve the sum of 5.97 trillion. So your recurrent expenditure outstrips your capital expenditure. And you're then surprised that each year your country is not developing. This is not rocket science. When we go further, the sector that got the highest votes was works and housing, 398 billion. And that is about 18% of the budget, in a sense, 18%. Health got 6%. Education, somewhere similar. Now, it begs the question. We say we have a medium to long-term development plan. We hear of seminars, conferences that are organized in furtherance of this development plan. But when you see the budget each year, you then begin to wonder, how are these plans ever going to come into fruition? So I'm not holding my breath out, and let's see. And interesting final point, the subsidy has been retained when it should have gone. And this is going to be very interesting news for the 18 gentlemen who are aspiring to be president come next year.
All right, Punch newspaper now. Chibuzor, on this, strikes honor agreements with ASU. That is what the National Association of Nigerian Students, Zone C, has urged the federal government to do. Also urging the government to place more emphasis on proper funding of the education sector. We've already seen what percentage of the budget is going to education. Chibuzor, what would you say to this?
So this is just another installment in the strike chronicles. Obviously, the students represented by NANS Zone C in this instance are basically speaking out to or appealing to the federal government to basically to meet up with ASU's demands to prevent the recurrence of the strikes or recurrence of the strikes. Obviously, unfortunately, strikes have become almost part of our daily life in Nigeria when it comes to the educational system, especially at the tertiary level. I was listening to the program yesterday, and I have a bit of when it comes to tertiary education, I think obviously I'm one of those people that feels that our spending on education is inadequate, and we need to spend a lot more. One of the challenges obviously is funding that spend. And one of the issues I feel is that there's a lot of, rightly or wrongly, there's a lot of emphasis on the tertiary education spend, because obviously we have organizations like ASU or groups like ASU that can actually go on strike and demand for increases in money being sent to that space. But the major challenge is ensuring that a lot of people have called for cost-effective pricing or charging at the tertiary level. But if you're ever going to get to that point, you need to spend a lot more on the primary and secondary to correct the quality deficit that is at both levels. If not, what we have at the moment, because what we have at the moment is basically a primary and secondary system that is standing on one leg, and your tertiary that is basically supposed to ingest or taking the products of output of those systems and turn them into something super, which cannot happen. You have guys who are poorly prepared at the secondary level who are going into the tertiary level, and making it cost effective when you have not sorted out things like ensuring that how do the majority of the guys who cannot afford to pay the cost effective rates, how can they be catered for? And in other climes, I tell everybody that bothers to listen, in other climes, you have things like student loans, you have scholarships that are spread wide and far for those who are academically gifted or sports gifted. You have programs that are designed to ensure that the best of the best, or those who want to do it, who want to go that far, can get there if they choose to. And you also have systems that ensure that if you don't even get into the tertiary system, if you go part of the secondary system, you can get a job that allows you to feed and at least take care of yourself at the basic levels. We don't have that. We don't have that system in flow yet. And instead of looking at it from a systems point of view, we are picking at each of the threads and trying to solve each of the problems independently of the other. So while the students can appeal, the reality is that there are issues on ground that need to be sorted out long term for strikes to no longer be an issue. And the government, whichever government comes in, because I don't see much of it changing between now and next year, needs to take a good look at it and needs to have a long-term plan on education. How do we go through education? We should stop using education as a political tool, as a political handout to appear to want to make our constituents happy. Well, in the long term, what we manage to build over a period of time is a system where the less fortunate, the masses actually are held at the truth and have to go through the system, while everybody else, anybody who can afford to, and which is the few Nigerians wealthy enough, are plugging now into a private system from primary level down to tertiary level.
All right.
which is kind of unfortunate because back in the days, one of the things I used to enjoy when I was in primary school in Lagos here and secondary school was that at those levels, secondary school and primary school was a bridge between all levels of the economy. You had both the extremely poor and some of the very wealthy in the public system.
It was a melting pot. Yeah.
It was a melting pot. Those schools had quality from the federal government schools to even some of the state government schools. It was a melting pot.
And they have some pretty robust alumni networks as well now.
Exactly. And now you've missed out on that because what you have, you can't see you can't see those people coming into those systems again because you don't offer any value of any sort for them. So there's no attraction. That needs to be sorted out.
All right then. Let me take some messages now. Yinka Balu says, but why do we actually need raw cash? Seriously. Well, Yinka, if none of the analysis that you've heard from this Freshly Pressed and previous Freshly Pressed convinces you, then that's all right. Go cashless. We'd love to hear your feedback. Yele from Ondo says, a friend took the new 1,000 Naira notes to Lagos Island Market yesterday, and it took lots of explanation before some of the market women took the money. I can imagine what will happen in the remote areas. And Tony from Marine Beach says, we need to stop the worries and complaints about the Naira redesign. The CBN has reviewed the limits to a more comfortable value and has proven from data that 94% of Nigerians won't be affected. What else do we want? Do we want all these terrorists to have enough time to change their money? All these politicians make use of hidden cash to buy votes, and then we come back here and complain. Please, let's not allow them to have the space. They're fighting their own, or for their own selfish course. All right, let's move on now. From Business Day, inflation robs Nigerian stock traders of real returns. Now, from time to time, I'll hear from investors and people in the investment circle that Nigeria is actually a fantastic place for investors with some pretty spectacular returns. But that was before we saw these high levels of inflation. And I'm wondering what the story is now, Mr. C.
Okay, so very quickly. This year, the Nigerian stock market is billed to close at an increase of 16.36%. Now, we need to understand that this is a tremendous increase because at this time last year, we were closing at 6.7%. So that's almost a 10% increase year on year. But guess what? Inflation last year closed at 15.63%. This year, it's going to close at 21.47%, which is an increase, a 17-year high increase. So the import of what I just said is there's a negative real rate of return. Now, we've also seen this year that the foreign portfolio investors have stayed away, and this growth was driven by domestic and retail investors. Why have the foreign portfolio investors stayed away? They stayed away because your Forex regime is not transparent, it's not liquid enough. Hawkish monetary policies from the CBN. Now, the CBN had this intention at the beginning of the year to grow the economy. But as the implications of the Russia-Ukraine war started to hit home, along with the actions taken by other central banks in other parts of the world, the CBN had to raise by 500 basis points its interest rate from 11 to 16.5%, which is the largest annual rate adjustment in 11 years. So that takes us back to 2011. The cash reserve ratio went up by 500 basis points to 32.5%. Now, on the back of this, the foreign portfolio investors are unlikely to come in because one, like I've said, there's a negative real rate of return. It doesn't make sense for them to come in. Two, there's a lot of uncertainty. Our weak macroeconomic policies are not helping matters. And onto all of this result, I'm afraid we're still going to be here. Now, this business about the DSS looking for the central bank governor is not sending any bright notes, any notes of comfort or assurance to foreign portfolio investors because they're wondering, this is a highly placed public official. Why is this being coordinated so clumsily?
Okay, that's one word. All right. Let's end the show on this message from Yinka Bolu, who says, I look forward to the day when both the federal government and parents will agree that basic education should get all the attention it needs, then make tertiary education optional and not totally free, at least with government funding it up to 25%. Do you know what primary and secondary schools do in PTA meetings? It's because they have PTA meetings, it's because they pay fees and they are concerned about how the school is run. Let parents and guardians pay school fees for universities and you will see it properly managed. And he goes on to say the worst of the lecturers would then have been long sacked. Interesting. All right, so thank you very much, gentlemen. If you could just direct people over to your handles so that they can come find you on Twitter, Instagram, wherever you are. Mr. C.
Monsieur C across all social media platforms.
Monsieur C. And Chibuzor?
Chimanu, that's CHIMANUTD on Instagram, and Chimanu2000 on Twitter. Twitter. That's fine.
All right, wonderful. Thank you so much for joining me for today's Freshly Pressed. It was an interesting one. Coming up, we'll be talking entertainment inside the grapevine, and that is at 8:50.